Welcome to Experience Focused Leaders. Today I'm joined by Brian Liu. Brian is the founder, CEO, chair of LegalZoom, the company that helped redefine access to legal services and ultimately became a first publicly listed legal tech company from a startup era of late 90s. Brian, welcome to the pod.
Thank you, Alex. Thanks for having me on.
Well, I'm really excited. I've had the privilege of uh, hearing you advise some other startups on a board that we advisory board that we shared.
Yep.
And when I heard that, I said, "Hey, first of all, I could benefit from some of your advice, and also our audience would love to hear your story and the rich experience that you bring." So, first, just tell us, how do you go from arguably the most conservative profession, law, to trying to disrupt it was a startup back in the days when startups weren't that hot. The you were the
Yeah.
pioneer.
Well, I think it's a funny story, Alex. I think, from the first days of law school, I met one of my best friends, Brian Lee, who was my other LegalZoom co-founder. We met on the first day of law school. And I think we were immediately drawn to each other because we both looked at each other and we said, what are you doing here? Why are you in law school? And
Mm,
I don't know. Why are you here? And so we kind of formed a bond because we knew that we weren't going to be practicing lawyers forever. And
mhm,
that was never really our intention of
mm.
going to school. I think for me, it was like I didn't know what else I was going to do after
Was it
college.
to please your parents? Come, let's go there.
I'm sure
To prove to
100%.
something to them?
I'm sure that had a little to do with it, Alex. Well, you know me
I,
really
I
well.
I've been there was my business school thing, so I get it. Or like, in fact, I was
Yeah,
thinking like I might go to law school because I don't know what else is there to do, and then
yep.
somebody told me unless you want to be practicing law, uh,
Yeah, well, so after law school, I did. I practiced law for a
yeah,
couple years
okay,
because you have to learn what's going on. And they were really good because law school teaches you one thing over
yeah,
here, and
yeah,
then being actually an attorney at a big firm or even, at a small, it doesn't matter. It's
mm,
it's something entirely different. It's over here. And
mm,
that's why we actually started LegalZoom because I
okay,
knew there was a huge disconnect in terms of what people actually needed and what
mm,
people, the average American, what they were looking for and what they were teaching you in school and what you're doing at a big law firm. I mean, it's just completely disconnected.
mm. And
The
what?
last thing,
Yeah,
let me tell
yeah,
you something funny. The
yeah,
last
yeah.
thing they actually teach you in wills and trust class, because you are supposed to take wills and trust and estate planning.
Which is like
Last thing
what the
they teach
most
you is
useful is that like the most practical class besides divorce law for most
yeah,
Americans then?
no, it's not because the last thing they teach you is how to actually write a will.
Okay.
You had
Wow.
no idea. You learn all of the theories and all the weird situations, but you don't know how to do the actual basic thing.
Wow.
And
So it
that's
sounds like it
exactly
is
how.
really an academic and it is an academic training, not a practical applied training.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. So that's where, what we always say, and I think this is still true, is we never went out to try to, like get lawyers out of the job or take away their business. It was all about creating additional access. It was about democratizing the law because we knew that there were lots and lots of people who didn't have or didn't want to pay the amounts that the lawyers were charging. And I mean, and
Mm,
there's good reasons why the lawyers charge the amounts that they do because they
mm,
have their own liability. They
yeah.
have so many more things that they have to think about. And it's just, they can't undertake those particular services without charging
Mm,
as much as
mm,
they do. And so
mm,
we wanted to, open up the market, open up the access for just everyday individuals, everyday Americans, so that they can, get the protection of an LLC when they start a business. They can write wills on their own. They can
right.
trademark their names and products and do that without all the additional costs and baggage that it comes when you're using, a professional lawyer.
Mm.
But there are
So,
always good reasons why you need to go to a lawyer as well. And we acknowledge that at the very beginning. And that's why we've always at LegalZoom, we have, lawyer assisted services as well on the platform.
but through the news, I kind of heard there were some challenges for your business from the institutional legal kind of
Oh yeah.
system. How did you handle that? How did it feel on your kind of journey? Relatively young founders, right? That was your
Yeah.
first adventure. uh what's it like, because is lawyer is being a lawyer trained as a lawyer prepares you for conflict in building a startup, or is that like, did that feel very personal
Yeah.
as a founder?
It's tough, Alex, because we knew that if we got challenged too much at the beginning, I mean, it could bring us under because we didn't have the resources to defend against a lot of these actions. So we tried to stay under the radar as much as we could, but that wasn't really possible when we had Robert Shapiro as our co-founder and we were doing so much PR with him. So
And
what
just
we
for our audience, Robert Shapiro, that's not Legal Eagles. Robert Shapiro
is the
was
O.J. Simpson
OJ
attorney.
Simpson's, right? Like the
Yeah.
glove, the glove doesn't
Yeah.
fit, right? Okay.
Yep, yep, yep. He was part of that. He organized the whole dream team. And
Okay.
so we had him as one of our co-founders. And what he insisted that we do was that we had to basically, get an opinion. This is hard. We had to get an opinion from a law firm saying that what we were doing was, supportable, that it was legal, it was
Mm,
legit. And California luckily had a law in the books for quote legal document assistance. And we
mm,
were pretty good at sticking to those rules. And
mm,
then, that was only in California. How we operated in other states, of course, other states gave us, sometimes some problems. They investigated us, but at the time, I think the core of what we did was we were filling out legal forms.
mm,
And the idea of creating legal templates, fill in the blank forms, those have been around for more decades and decades. If you remember, they used to have bookstores where people would
mm,
go and
mm,
you can buy these books on how to draft your own will. I mean, Nolo would have series of these books, and there literally were tear out forms in the back of these, or you
mm.
can fill it in, type it in, and you can make your own legal documents. I
So
mean,
you're
you
like
could,
legal docs for dummies
oh
with
yeah,
forms that kind of get filled out
yes,
and kind of unlocking that lower end of the market
yeah.
while creating room for premium services for attorneys and like.
And there was software at that time.
Mhm.
Quicken actually had something called like Willmaker. It's a
Mm,
software product that they made. And all we were doing at that time was introducing that and putting it online as opposed to making it a static product. That was our main thing because you could, with a book, you got 100 pages, right?
mm,
And who's going to read 100 pages just to do a simple document when we can help you do that online in 15
mhm,
minutes.
mm,
That was the software product, of course, you update all the time. You don't know if you didn't know if it was outdated or if it was already too old. So if you bought that software and you didn't have the internet connections were not always great at that time either.
mm. And so when you think about the evolution to today's world, right? Fast forward where, we have Harvey, and then Claude one
Yeah.
day disrupts Harvey, and there's, still like in the last few years a number of legal tech AI unicorns just emerged.
Hmm.
What has changed and what remains the same in your view?
Boy, what is the main thing I think that's changed, Alex, is that finally the legal practitioners, the lawyers, the actual end users
Mm.
are demanding that lawyers utilize technology, that they rely on, something else, that the clients are demanding this.
So basically, the your group that you were targeting, the small business owners, the individuals, were always more eager to innovate because of the cost constraint.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
but what you're saying is what's changed is the kind of the B2B component,
Yeah.
the enterprise component was that historically has been, you know, premium services,
Hmm.
lots of fees, lots of folks straight out of law school supporting partners. And
Yeah,
now that's changing, right?
yes, that's changing completely. And interestingly, I think one of the reasons it changed is because the large law firms kept on increasing their fees. They kept on
Mm,
increasing them and increasing them. And the clients are like, we got to cut down on some of these fees. So they're demanding that the firms be more efficient and that they adopt AI. And I think some of the larger firms are going to fight, and they may fight this for a while, but it's going to be difficult because it's not just AI. There's alternative structures and alternative legal providers, even in the US, that's been working to help some of these some of these companies, things like Axiom and these other types of distributed
mm.
legal models, more like almost like in in-house additional in-house legal support models that are out there that are helping these
Helping bring
companies
the
lower their
costs
legal
down,
fees.
right?
Yeah.
So like from one perspective, this makes perfect sense. But then when I look at, a few years ago, prior maybe to a complete AI takeover, there was an attempt by very well-known entrepreneurs to build something called Atrium, which
Oh
was
yeah.
gonna, disrupt all those costs, especially starting in the Silicon Valley.
Yep.
And then it like notoriously like had all the best investors, great team, and then just something went
Yeah.
wrong. What's you know I what's your observation of where have attempts to disrupt this have gone wrong in the past? Maybe it's this one, maybe some others that you've had your eyes on, and
Yeah.
why? What's changing now? Is it just the technology that's democratizing it, or it's like that pressure, or is it like some perfect storm that's happening that's making it
Yeah.
all work?
It's very interesting, very relevant what you just asked, Alex, because what I used to tell people all the time is, your venture into legal tech or compliance tech, congratulations, thank you for doing this, but this is going to be a thank you for your service because this is not going to be an easy journey. You're not going to find a lot of investors who are really interested. You might have to do a lot of bootstrapping.
Yeah.
You're going to have to reach down deep many times, and you're going to have to ask yourself, why are you doing this? Is
Mm,
this something that you are doing purely because you think that it's financially lucrative? Is there something else? What's your core reason for doing this? And I remember, as
mm,
we're kind of like, who knows, this is like, the date today is like the day after it looks like we might have another, world conflict on our hands. But I remember specifically coming into the office, you know, during that morning of the 9/11 attacks, 25 years ago.
mm,
And we were only we started out a year and a half ago.
mm,
And I remember talking to my other co-founders and saying, geez, I mean, we don't know what's going to happen. What
mm,
is going to happen in this world? I mean, we're here, we're doing a legal startup, but there's so many other things going on. Like, and you really think, why are we here? Why are we doing this? Why don't I have just a stable job
right.
when in the midst of chaos, I'm trying to pay for my house and everything else?
Yeah.
Like, there's so much uncertainty.
Mm,
And you have to know why you are in that. So
mm,
that was always been the traditional, like the key for success for me for a good legal tech startup, that the founders really know why.
mm,
I think what's changed in the last year and a half, 2 years maybe, is that all of a sudden, private investors are really, really interested in this whole legal tech space and legal tech adjacent space. It's become like one of the darlings of the investment world. So
mm,
what's great about it is that you have a lot of people who were not lawyers, who don't have any, legal background, and who've decided that this is a great area
Mm.
for disruption, for improvements, for democratization. And they've come in with a different new perspective on things. So that's really great. And also for the existing founders, now there's a lot more access to capital than there
Hmm.
was before.
Mm.
So I think it's still really relevant why, you do something. I think it's always relevant. But what's great is that there is additional support out there. So it doesn't feel like you're entirely on an island anymore.
Got it. So there's going to be likely more innovation because the breakthrough, the profession kind of had it coming because it kind of stayed pretty resistant to change, at least in some
Yeah,
pockets, right? Not your bottom up pocket, but
yeah,
the higher echelons. And there are fat margins led
yep,
to customers. So there's that pressure, and then was one breakthrough success story. Plus, it lends itself well to LLMs. There's kind of think this is the time to break through, and then everybody's jumping in. And what's
yeah.
your take? Are the people that are tourists sort of like yeah, I had a bad experience with a lawyer. I got overcharged. I didn't get, and I'm gonna go fix that, right? Because that's like oftentimes the founder motivation,
That
right? Like I couldn't get a taxi on time, so is like, are these folks, are they, what's your take? What's going to happen? Are they going to stick it out with, go through the challenges? Is there going to be consolidation?
I
uh
mean, I think that's not unique to just legal tech. I think it's true for pretty much everything, right? You got to
yeah.
know why you're doing something. Like I see this like for example, in the restaurant industry. I mean, completely different, but if your idea was I'm going to start a restaurant to make some money because I've always liked to do this and I think it's kind of fun, you're not going to survive.
Yeah.
You have to love doing this. This has to be something that's a passion that you've had, that's deep. It's much deeper than simply, oh, I like trying new places and I've always wanted to do this. And because I have a couple friends who've done that. And without that deeper why of why they're getting into it, it's just not going to survive the first time you face hardship. And you're bound to face hardship multiple times.
Well, talk to us about what happens when you're going through these hardships, right? Like LegalZoom was nearly 20 years for you.
Oh yeah.
uh
Yeah, I was CEO for the first 7 years. I stayed
yeah.
on as chairman for the
Yeah.
next, executive chairman until 2012. And then I was on the board as the chairman
Yeah.
until, jeez, I can't even remember.
2018, I think. The bio
Yeah,
says 2018.
yeah,
So
2018.
that's a long perspective.
Yeah.
Lot, like what, 20 crises per year probably, that you kind of an average or something like that.
Lots,
uh
yes, lots of challenges, lots of crises, lots of, you know, we luckily we didn't have anything as I look back on it that was an existential threat. I
mm.
mean, we definitely had a lot of problems and issues, but nothing that felt like it was, like life or death threat, but definitely challenges. When you have I'm just gonna laugh at this one. There's a certain state that I will not name that
Hmm.
accused me of illegally practicing law without a license.
Okay.
And then it was a criminal complaint.
Okay.
And like the only thing I could say is that I've never been in this state. I will never travel this state. I will never fly over this state.
Right. Right.
But somebody in a different state is threatening to put me in jail because of what we're doing. And it was like I mean I pretty much ignored it and I laugh about it now because
But at the time when you were speaking to your partner,
yeah, and they came
was
after
that a
me
laughing
personally,
matter?
right?
Was that a laughing matter, or did it feel
It
bigger?
was more of like, okay, I'm never gonna go there, but how, really?
Yeah.
Really? Like, I mean, here's the thing. I mean, it could happen,
Yeah.
right? You get arrested for driving over the speed limit, and then they look, oh, we got a warrant for your arrest, by the way,
Yeah.
and you're going to be in jail for who knows how
Yeah.
long
Yeah.
for illegally unlicensed practice of law.
So when you when you
I'm
say
not mentioning
okay,
the state because they're going to get angry at me.
yeah, yeah,
I'm still afraid to go there, by the way.
yeah,
Okay,
you
that's
never
how bad
know,
it
you
is.
never know, yeah.
They know where I am. They're going to come after me. Forget it.
So when you think about existential risk, we're gonna the when you was a perspective of time. Right now, you've seen your journey, other companies you helped found, um, you're advising companies. It was a perspective of time. Few things seem existential, right? Like,
Yeah.
but at the time, especially if it's the first exposure to a particular type of crisis or risk,
Yeah,
it probably felt different. And I'm curious
it did.
what you felt like. Where did you find the perseverance and the faith, the discipline, the pause, almost whatever your meditative break to go
Uh-huh.
and like restart, deal with it versus react? Because I would say for myself personally, I noticed at some point something happens at work. I don't like it. I hide it at work, but then like my daughter comes up with some light request and I go, yeah, I'm like, there's something that comes out and I'm working on it, right? But it's
Yeah,
not an obvious thing of like how do you process all that stress that you get as an entrepreneur,
yeah.
um
Look,
going through disrupting industries.
we what was probably existential at the time was we had a lot of investigations instituted by state attorney generals and different bar associations and things like
Mm,
that. And we had to go and allay their fears. We had a team, my general counsel, Chaz Ramthal, who was really, really great at this. And,
mm,
he was a former Navy pilot. And
right.
he was just, the type of guy that when you walked in to these committees and they asked, what do you do? He was really good and authoritative, just saying, like, we know where the lines are and we don't cross those lines.
Mm,
And I think one thing that we found is that the more we were able to get in front of these different bar association committees and attorney generals, so we showed them who we were, and we were really, we're not trying to be shady. We're not trying to put lawyers out of business. We're really doing something, one, that's good for the general public, and two, we actually do want to help the lawyers out as well, and we're integrating them into our platform. The more we were open about that and open to their suggestions and open to dialogue, I think that was a realization that we had. We thought it was going to be more of a fight, but it turns out that open lines of communication were much more important.
mm. So speaking of as a kind of this open line of communications, what would you say were your challenges as a leader, when you were starting out, and now that you're advising others, right? You've had more of a perspective, as a chair, you kind of you have a steward role, um, that you say, hey, I wish I could talk to my younger self and address that or this issue
Yeah,
earlier, right? Like advice to younger Brian and all of us who are kind of in our pre-IPO journey right now.
yeah. I mean, definitely. This is where, from my background and everything else, it's people tend to think all the times it's them, it's their ideas that make something successful.
Mm,
Most of the time, it is about the organization, the people that you have,
mm,
the other people that you know, and learning all these people's skills. I mean,
mm,
that's what actually tends to make something successful.
mm.
I wish that, a little off the tangent, but when I was in law school, I actually applied for business school. I
Okay,
wanted to do a joint program. They didn't let me in.
their
And
mistake.
they didn't let me in because they said, you have to understand, Brian, that business school is not about the subject matter. It's not about learning finance or accounting or marketing or anything else. It is about learning how to deal with others, how to work together in groups.
Mm,
And that's and those, learning finance is just a way for you all together to get together and
right.
learn how to work with each other. I understood that, and I wish I did more to grow that part of me like a long time ago. I still wish I could do it now, but I feel like I'm getting too old to learn new things, you know? But
Brian,
yeah,
let me tell you something. I did go to business school. In fact, I went to two. I even did an
oh,
undergrad and an MBA. And I like what they were saying, and I thought I understood what they were saying about that, right? But I don't think you internalize it until you make a few
yeah.
uh, omelets where you break some eggs, right? And I think but I would like because I think in our pop culture, right, from when we think law profession, like, and also the types of people that get attracted to business, there are people who want to win, right? I want to
Yep.
win with my ideas, you want to win the
Yes.
case, right? Like there's that. And I think there is a relatively simplistic narrative in our culture about
Yes.
winning and losing, right? That's why we like the legal dramas, right? Like there's that satisfaction towards the end. And I think what you kind of highlighted is very powerful, is like the winning the argument is not necessarily going to help the
Yeah.
relationship and the bigger aim of building something, right? And I think as a CEO, obviously you have a lot of power, right? You
Right.
could win things through a number of ways, right? And you're a very clever guy. But I think what you're saying is it's knowing when to use that muscle and when not to
Yeah.
is a journey.
Absolutely. And we think in our culture that there's some, exceptional entrepreneurs and founders who've started these, giant mega caps all by themselves, and it was all
Right.
them. And
Right.
everything was all them. But I guarantee you, none of them would have been successful if they either weren't able to, attract other people with their vision, to
Right.
recruit the right people to sell that vision. You have to communicate that to somebody else so that other people believe. And then, you're not personally, like I'm sure Mark Zuckerberg, after a while, was not personally writing the code for Facebook. He was not personally figuring out the algorithms, I'm sure he
Mm-hmm.
had a leadership role in it, but he was maybe, I mean, it all these things that happened, they were not always just ideas of one person. It
Yeah.
took a group of people, of really smart people to follow this person, that vision to get to where they are.
Mm. So you're what you're talking about is really feels like trust, right? Like that we trust in you as a leader, and then you trust
Yes.
us as individuals that we're going to work together to accomplish something.
Overall, yep, overall
Yeah.
leadership, yep. And that's the type of leadership skills that you don't learn, you don't certainly don't learn that as a subject matter in school. I don't think there's classes that really teach you, and then you just gotta go out and do it.
Yeah, there
You
is
know?
no class on trust even in business school, but
Yeah.
what I found is that was interesting is one of the most popular classes at Stanford was called interpersonal dynamics, or popularly known as touchy
Oh.
feely, and it talked a lot about influence. How do
Mm.
you be vulnerable or share certain things to influence others? And I think that's great, but even that had a little bit of a transactional
Mm.
vibe when we kind of reflected on it. As I was time I reflected, and I think it was a good start of becoming more self-aware on these topics. Uh,
Hmm.
but I think if you start with a goal to transactionally influence somebody, uh, you're gonna people are not dumb over long relationships, right? Like that's why like your deep passion about what you're building is important,
Yeah.
because that's authentic, right? And so yeah, maybe you could learn some skills like, okay, I'm gonna keep my palms open right now, you're gonna trust me now. We're like, but like that's sort of maybe a behavior, a good habit to acquire. but that is not, if you go into that was a purpose that I'm going to manipulate Brian, right? Like people will smell through that stuff. So I think
Yeah.
it's something has gotta like go to that level of depth of where you're trying to build real long-term trust, work towards a common goal. And I want to bring that, if you could comment on that, but also in the context of what are a lot of our audience is working in regulated industries. They're working with compliant
Hmm.
communications. Um, and our view is that the focus should be there to build the trust between the creator and their audience. And if you
Yeah.
do that, everything else will work out. But you can't build trust by, you know, creating a wall of information and hiding behind small print, right? That's not a trust build. That may be legally required, but it's not a way to build trust. So you kind of have somehow need to make things accessible, make be both
Yeah.
compliant and relationship building at the same time. What are your thoughts on like building in this world where trust is, obviously not a commodity that you find not just in startups, right, but like all
Yeah.
around, like there's a lack of
So
trust.
So I think, look, one of the things that everybody is facing right now is whether AI can kind of take over what they're doing.
Right.
And that human trust element is really important, I think,
Mm,
because from whether it's the user or anybody else, they want to have this, we lump a lot of things into this idea of trust. And
right.
one of the main components that goes into it, I think, is understanding the humans, the human impetus, the reason why, again, why you're doing something. Like for an example, right? I talk at LegalZoom. It was about, support for us. One of our missions is to support that entrepreneurial journey, and
Mm,
not just to support it, but to really, be on their side. I mean, our whole idea was that we want to put the law on your side. We put this into our slogan, and we did that as part of the PR and part of the story behind it because people remember the story. And
right.
the story, of course, is that, we are also business owners, we're entrepreneurs. We understand how you feel. We're going through that. We're
Mm,
trying to make your journey easier because that also fulfills our mission. We want everybody to have these benefits of the law so that they can spend less money on these legal matters, more money on their business. And we're here to support you along the way.
got it. So you weren't building trust by having extra long form that they
No,
had to fill out waiving liability.
right, exactly. It's coming up with authentic stories,
Yeah.
authentic reasons of why you are doing something.
Mm,
And again, story there is that, my dad was a small business owner. I
mm,
saw what he did for our family when he started this business. He was working, at another company, and then he went out on his own. And then, from the first days, I remember going to his office. And he
mm.
rented this office in Pioneer Square in Seattle. And
Oh, I love it.
he had 4 desks in this office,
Yeah,
4 desks. He
yeah.
showed us this office. And I was like, Dad, you're here. You've got 3 other desks. Why did you get these desks?
Mm,
Did you rent them? Why is the office so big? You're the only person here. And he said, you know what? Those desks will be filled. We're going to have
mm,
more people come and they're going to be sitting in them. I bought those desks because they will be here.
mm,
And you see that, you feel that. And
mm,
that's something very different. I think humans have the ability to feel that from people. It's not a logical thing, it's an intuition that they have. And when they see that you get them, you
mm,
understand what they're going through. You're here to help them in that genuine sort of way that feels authentic. And it's like you said, it's not something you read from a book to influence people,
mm,
not doing it just to make money. That
mm.
is how you build loyalty. That's how you build trust. That's how they're like, Alex, look, we're going to be here for you because you're here for us. And that,
Wow.
by the way, is one thing I think I hope that people will see through that AI is not able to do that. They can do things, but they will never have that, you know, they never will have that empathy, that bonding,
That
that
care, authentic
care
care,
on
right? They
this.
will
Yeah.
sound, yeah.
And they're very good at making it sound like, oh my God, that's such a great idea, Alex.
Yeah.
Hey, we
Yeah.
really feel for you. But you know it's not authentic
Yeah.
because it
Well,
doesn't have a story.
what a beautiful mic drop, Brian. Authentic, caring, and storytelling
Yeah.
as a way
It's,
to
it's one
describe the
reason, by the
most
way.
legal, compliant, uh, process driven profession,
Yeah.
right? And I love your how you connected it back to being a 7-year-old and seeing your dad. I think that's an amazing story. Brian, what's as we wrap up, last kind of words of wisdom for our audience as they are embarking on bringing that care and trust and storytelling into their communications. What can you share that you wish you had learned uh to get that to that IPO faster, or
Oh.
to have avoided a few sharp corners.
Oh, those are all some of the things that we went through. I'm happy that we did. I'm happy that there were certain delays at certain times. I mean, we had difficulties with some of our early investors. I don't think we were ready for an IPO early. There are a lot of things going on. We actually filed for an IPO in 2012 before actually having the IPO in 2021. So,
Mm,
I'm kind of happy that that didn't happen because I don't think the team was ready for it. We weren't ready for what it was going to take to, be a public company and with the stock where it is. It's a tough situation. I'm not sure if IPO is always the best way to
always the
go
right side.
out.
So basically, be like almost be acceptant of the journey, right? Like accept the journey because sometimes we feel like we want to force it.
Yeah,
Uh,
the journey, I mean, as long as it's not too painful, the journey is always great. A few challenges is what makes, I mean, that's what you remember. You remember those challenges. You don't remember those days where everything just went perfect. Nobody remembers those. I mean,
yeah,
you remember certain milestones, the first time,
yeah.
whatever, the $1 million, $1 million day, or whatever. You'll remember those milestones, but you'll remember the challenges and how you overcame those challenges a lot more.
Beautiful. Well, Brian, I will remember this conversation. I'm really glad our journeys crossed, and I'm glad that we've shared your wisdom and experience with our audience. Thank you so much for coming on board.
Thanks, Alex.